Subscribe for the full story.
My family thought I lost my hearing and openly plotted against me. I understood every word and plotted back. The world went quiet, or at least that's what they told me. One moment, the roar of the world was a familiar friend. The next, a muffled whisper. Then, nothing. They said it was the fever, the one that nearly took me. They said it left me deaf. Please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, share this with your friends, and leave a comment below. They didn't know I was still listening. Oh, I played the part, nodding blankly, smiling a little too much, and pretending to strain to hear. It was so easy, really. They thought they had me, cornered and controlled, like a prize they could simply take. They were wrong. So very wrong. My home, once a place of comfort, became my theater, and their foolish pronouncements were my script. It started subtly. After I finally came back to myself after that terrible illness, the doctors said my hearing might not return. My family, they seemed to latch on to that might like a lifeline. It was my Aunt Carol who first noticed my apparent silence. She was visiting, a rare event, and I was sitting in my favorite armchair by the window, watching the birds. She'd called my name, I'm sure, but I just looked at her, her face creased with pity. Oh, dear Arthur. She'd sighed, her voice a little too loud, a little too slow. He's really gone, isn't he? My Uncle Robert, a man who always smelled faintly of cigars and ambition, had been there too. He'd put a hand on Carol's shoulder, his own expression, a mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's a shame," he'd said, his voice deep and resonant. Such a strong young man, and now this. "But we'll look after him. Of course we will." I remember looking at them, this sudden warmth in their tone, this eagerness to look after me. It felt off, like a tune played in a minor key. My mother, bless her heart, was the most genuinely distressed. She'd cry often, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She'd speak to me in soft, comforting tones, her words a gentle stream I could still catch, a faint echo in the vast quiet they'd built around me. But even in her grief, I saw a flicker of something else, a shared glance with my father, a hushed conversation that stopped abruptly when I turned my head. They thought I was lost in my silent world. They couldn't see the world I was still very much a part of, the one they were so carelessly weaving their own destinies within. It was the family gatherings that truly opened my eyes. Before my illness, these were occasions of boisterous laughter and lively debate. Now, they were different. My family, my blood, treated me as if I were a child, a fragile thing to be handled with extreme care. They spoke about me as if I wasn't there, or worse, as if I were a property, an asset that needed managing. I'd sit at the head of the table, my fork poised, my gaze fixed on some distant point, and I'd hear it all. "He's making progress, isn't he?" My father, his voice laced with that familiar false cheer, would ask my Uncle Robert. "Progress in what, George?" Robert's voice, smooth and calculating, was always the one that set my teeth on edge. He's still uncommunicative, and frankly, the finances are becoming a concern. We can't keep things as they are indefinitely. "But his assets," my father trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. "Arthur's inheritance." My inheritance. A substantial one, thanks to my grandparents. It was the reason for the sudden surge of familial affection after my supposed deafness. They'd always been polite, my relatives. But this was a new level of attentiveness. It was like I was a shiny coin they were all trying to pry from a stubborn lock. "We need to make a decision," Aunt Carol chimed in, her voice sharp with impatience. "The estate lawyers are asking questions. They need someone to manage Arthur's affairs. And who better than his own family?" My mother would often interject, her voice trembling, "But we can't just take over. Arthur would want." "Arthur is incapacitated, Eleanor," Robert cut in, his tone dismissive. "He can't possibly make these decisions himself. We're doing what's best for him. And for the family, naturally." The word naturally was delivered with a chillingly pragmatic tone. They were planning to take control of my money. They were already discussing how best to manage my assets, which, in their minds, clearly meant how best to spend them. And all this, right in front of me, with me supposedly locked away in my silent world. The sheer audacity of it all, the casual cruelty, was staggering. I remember one afternoon, they were all in the living room, and I was in the study, pretending to read a book. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear their voices drifting in. "The property on the coast," Robert was saying, his voice low and intense. "It's prime real estate. If we sell it now, we can get a fantastic price, enough to cushion us all." "But Arthur loved that place," my mother protested weakly. "Arthur won't even know," Robert said, and I could almost hear his smile. "And if he does, he can't do anything about it. We'll say it was a necessary sale to cover his medical expenses. Who's going to argue with that?" My father's voice was a bit more hesitant. "Are you sure this is the best way, Robert? It feels a bit underhanded." "Underhanded?" Robert scoffed. "It's smart. It's practical. We're looking out for our own. Isn't that what families do?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. I closed my eyes, a slow burn starting in my chest. They were my family, yes, but they were also strangers, planning to rob me blind. The pity in their eyes was a performance, their concern a calculated facade. And I, Arthur, the deaf man, the man they thought they could manipulate, I was listening. And a different kind of plan was already beginning to form in the quiet spaces of my mind. The quiet they so wrongly believed had claimed me. The slow burn in my chest ignited into a controlled inferno. They saw my silence as an invitation, my supposed deafness as an opportunity. They couldn't conceive that the quiet they'd created was, in fact, a sanctuary for my burgeoning counter-offensive. I let them believe their little schemes were progressing smoothly, like a chess game where one player has already resigned internally but continues to move pieces for the illusion of engagement. My days became a meticulous ballet of feigned obliviousness. I'd sit at meals, my gaze distant, my responses minimal. A perfect picture of the afflicted. I'd watch their subtle glances, their hushed asides, cataloging every flicker of avarice, every shift in their carefully constructed personas. Uncle Robert, ever the pragmatist with an eye for the jugular, was the orchestrator. Aunt Carol, with her brittle impatience, was the eager lieutenant. My father, George, was the well-meaning but easily swayed accomplice. His conscience, a flickering candle easily snuffed out by Robert's persuasive logic. And my mother, Eleanor, bless her perpetually worried soul, was the conscience they all tried to ignore, her innate kindness, a faint whisper against the roaring tide of their greed. The coastal property was their first target. Robert had suggested it as a quick win, a substantial chunk of liquid capital that could be quickly dispersed and disguised. My father's hesitation was genuine, a brief moment of moral rectitude. But Robert's masterful manipulation, the appeals to family unity, the painted picture of financial stability for everyone, had undoubtedly won him over. I began my own subtle campaign. My deafness meant I had no need to interact, no need to explain. This isolation, however, became my greatest asset. I cultivated an air of serene acceptance, a passive victim too gentle to fight back. I'd nod when they spoke of necessary sales, my eyes vacant. But inwardly, I was a hive of activity. I started with small, seemingly innocent requests. When my mother would bring me a cup of tea, I'd gesture towards a particular book on my bedside table, a leather-bound volume of Shakespeare. She, in her quiet way, would pick it up and place it in my hand. I'd flip through it then, with exaggerated effort, point to a specific passage, a line about betrayal or hidden motives. I'd make sure to do this when my father was around, knowing his guilty conscience would be pricked by the poetic resonance. Then came the digital age. While they believed me lost in a world of tactile sensation and visual cues, I was very much alive in the online realm. Before my illness, I'd been quite tech-savvy, a hobby that now proved invaluable. Using voice-to-text software, a small, discreet earbud that they mistakenly believed was a hearing aid, a gift from my mother with the doctors, recommendation I could dictate emails and messages. My silence meant no one questioned the occasional typing sounds from my study, which they assumed was me engaging with accessible media. My first target was the coastal property's legal documents. I knew its exact location, a fact I'd gleaned from overheard conversations and my own extensive knowledge of our family holdings. Using a secure VPN and a burner laptop, I accessed the digital archives of the local council. It took days of meticulous searching, sifting through public records, but I found it: the property deeds, the land registry, the valuation reports. It was all there, a testament to my family's ambition and my grandparents' foresight. I also began to research the estate lawyers they mentioned. Their names, mentioned in passing by Aunt Carol, were enough. A few discreet searches, and I had their firm's website, their areas of expertise, and, crucially, their contact information. I noted their reputation for thoroughness and integrity. This was important. They were the gatekeepers of my inheritance, and while my family thought they were manipulating the situation, they hadn't yet considered the professionals who would be scrutinizing every detail. My mother's distress became a tool. I'd see her crying, and in those moments I'd gently take her hand. I wouldn't speak, of course, but I'd meet her gaze, and with a subtle squeeze, convey a silent reassurance. I knew she worried about me, but I also knew she worried about the family's reputation. I began to subtly plant seeds of doubt in her mind, not through words, but through gestures. When my father would talk about the estate, I'd look at my mother, a subtle frown on my brow, then back at my father, as if questioning his motives. I knew she'd pick up on it. Uncle Robert's ambition was his Achilles' heel. He was driven by a desire for wealth and influence. I discovered, through a carefully timed, accidental email left open on a shared family computer, which I later claimed I couldn't read, that he was involved in a rather precarious business venture. It wasn't outright illegal, but it was ethically dubious, a venture that relied on exploiting loopholes and undercutting competitors. This was my leverage. I orchestrated a series of misunderstandings. When Robert would call for me to sign a document that was meant to facilitate the sale of the coastal property, I'd feign confusion, pointing to a different section of the paper. I'd then subtly gesture towards the lawyers' names, as if seeking their approval. The implication was clear. I was not a pushover. I was a potential obstacle to their grand designs. The family gatherings became my personal intelligence briefings. I'd sit at the head of the table, the silent observer, the supposed recipient of their condescending pity. "Arthur, are you comfortable?" my mother would ask, her voice laced with that familiar, heartbreaking concern. I'd nod, offering a small, serene smile. "Your Uncle Robert was just explaining the situation with the coastal property." My father would chime in, his voice a little too loud, a little too hearty. "A necessary sale, you see, to ensure your continued comfort and care." I'd look at Robert. He'd offer a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a flicker of something akin to annoyance in his gaze. He knew I was watching, even if he couldn't prove it. He'd try to engage me, using exaggerated gestures, mouthing words slowly. I'd meet his gaze, a faint, unreadable expression on my face. One evening, during a particularly tense dinner where the sale of the coastal property was being discussed with renewed urgency, I decided to escalate my strategy. My father, perhaps emboldened by Robert, suggested a new plan: to place a significant portion of my inherited stocks into a family trust, managed by Robert, of course. "It's for your own good, Arthur," my father said, his eyes pleading for understanding, "to protect it from market fluctuations. Robert's a shrewd businessman, he'll make sure it grows." Robert beamed, a picture of benevolent guardianship. "And if anything should happen to you," Aunt Carol added, her voice dripping with feigned sorrow, "it ensures your legacy is well managed." I looked at them, my family, my supposed protectors. The sheer brazenness of their intentions was breathtaking. This wasn't about my comfort, it was about their enrichment. The planned family trust was a thinly veiled attempt to gain absolute control of my assets. That night I went to my study. The burner laptop was waiting. I had already drafted an email to the estate lawyers. It was carefully worded, presenting myself as Arthur, the rightful owner, expressing concerns about potential mismanagement of my assets, and requesting a private consultation. I included specific references to the coastal property sale and the proposed trust, framing them as queries rather than accusations. I attached copies of the deeds and valuation reports I'd obtained, subtly demonstrating my awareness of their plans. I also sent a separate, highly encrypted email to a trusted financial advisor, an old friend of my grandfather's who had always warned me about the avarice that often accompanied wealth. I outlined the situation in broad strokes, requesting his discreet assistance in safeguarding my financial future. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was subtly altered. My family, oblivious to my actions, continued their charade. My father was particularly solicitous, asking if I'd slept well, if I needed anything. Robert, however, seemed a little more guarded. He'd clearly sensed a shift, a faint tremor in the foundation of his carefully laid plans. The response from the estate lawyers came within 2 days. It was courteous but firm, requesting a meeting at my earliest convenience, stating that they were obligated to ensure my assets were managed according to my wishes, and that any significant transactions would require my direct, informed consent. They also expressed concern about the proposed trust, citing a need for further clarification on its terms and beneficiaries. I saw the lawyers' response on my laptop. I deliberately left it open on my desk when my father came in to check on me. His eyes, already scanning for any sign of my continued incapacitation, fell upon the screen. He froze. The color drained from his face. "Arthur, what is this?" he stammered, his voice cracking. I met his gaze. For the first time since my supposed deafness, I spoke, my voice low and clear, a sound that seemed to shock him into silence. "It seems, Father," I said, each word deliberate, measured, "that the lawyers are asking for clarity." He stared at me, his mouth agape, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. He knew I was listening. He knew I understood. "But you're deaf," he whispered, the words, a desperate plea for the reality he had so carefully crafted. I offered him a small, sad smile. "They said my hearing might not return, Father. They didn't say it wouldn't." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He turned and fled the room, a ghost of his former ambition in his eyes. Robert and Aunt Carol were next. When they heard about the lawyer's inquiry, their carefully managed composure fractured. Robert, ever the aggressor, confronted me. He barged into my study, his face a mask of barely suppressed rage. "You manipulative little," he began, his voice a snarl. I simply sat there, calmly reading my book. I didn't look up. "Don't you dare play these games with me, Arthur," he roared, his face red. "We're your family. We're trying to protect you." I finally lowered my book, my gaze steady. "Protect me?" I asked, my voice quiet, yet carrying an immense weight. "Or protect yourselves from the consequences of your greed?" He recoiled as if struck. The casual cruelty, the outright theft they had planned. It was all laid bare. "You listened," he stated, his voice hoarse. It wasn't a question. "Oh, I listened," I confirmed, my tone devoid of emotion. "And I understood every word, just as I understand your current predicament." His eyes widened. "What? What predicament?" "The one with that rather dubious business venture you're involved in," I said, a hint of ice in my voice. "The one that could unravel spectacularly if certain information were to reach the right people. People like the regulatory bodies, perhaps, or even the press." His bravado evaporated. He stammered, his ambition replaced by a chilling fear. He knew I had leverage. He knew I wasn't the broken, helpless victim they had portrayed. Aunt Carol, ever the opportunist, tried a different tack. She appeared the next day, her face etched with faux sympathy. "Oh, Arthur, darling," she cooed, her voice saccharine. "We're all so worried about you. Your father is beside himself. We just want what's best." I allowed her to cradle my hand, to stroke my hair, but my eyes, fixed on her face, saw only the calculations. the desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of their plans. "Perhaps," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but laced with a steel that surprised even myself, "we should all speak to the estate lawyers together, to ensure everyone's understanding is aligned." Her smile faltered. The implication was clear. I wouldn't be manipulated. I was in control. My mother was the most difficult to confront. Her distress was genuine, born of love and a lifetime of worry. When my father confessed my hearing hadn't been lost, she was heartbroken, not just by the deception, but by the realization of what her husband and brother-in-law had been plotting. I found her weeping quietly in the garden. I sat beside her, not touching her, just offering my silent presence. After a long while she looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice raspy, "what is all this?" I finally spoke, my voice softer this time, filled with a sorrow that mirrored her own. "Mother," I began, "they thought I was lost. They thought they could take what was mine, with no consequences." Tears streamed down her face again. "But why? Why would they do that?" "Because they forgot that family is not just about blood," I said. "It's about trust. And they broke that trust." I then explained, not with anger, but with a quiet dignity, the extent of their plans, the underhanded tactics, the greed that had blinded them. I showed her the emails, the documents, the evidence of their betrayal. She listened, her face a canvas of dawning horror and deep sadness. When I finished, she looked at me, her gaze steady for the first time in weeks. "What do we do now, Arthur?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread. "We do what is right, Mother," I replied. "We let the professionals handle this, and we rebuild trust where it is possible." The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of legal discussions and awkward family confrontations. Uncle Robert, facing the very real threat of exposure for his dubious business dealings and the potential legal ramifications of attempted asset misappropriation, quickly capitulated. He offered to step down from any management roles and discreetly settled his debts with his business partners, a move that conveniently absorbed a significant portion of his personal wealth. Aunt Carol, seeing her brother's downfall, prudently distanced herself from the affair, feigning ignorance and offering her support to my mother. She never mentioned the coastal property again. My father, humbled and ashamed, offered me a heartfelt apology. He admitted he had been swayed by Robert's promises of financial security for the family, a security that he had naively believed was for everyone's benefit. He was remorseful, truly remorseful, and I believed him. We began the slow, arduous process of rebuilding our relationship, one honest conversation at a time. The estate lawyers ensured that my assets remained protected and that no unauthorized transactions took place. The coastal property, my grandparents' beloved retreat, remained under my ownership, a testament to their legacy and a symbol of my own resilience. The world hadn't gone quiet for me. It had, in fact, become incredibly loud, filled with the whispers of deceit, the shouts of avarice, and the quiet strength of my own resolve. My family had plotted against me, believing my silence a weakness. They were wrong. My silence had been my strength, my sanctuary, my battleground. And in the quiet spaces they had so carelessly created, I had found my voice and my victory. The narrative had shifted. The role of the victim was no longer mine. I was the architect of my own defense, the silent warrior who had outmaneuvered his own kin. The fever had nearly taken me, but in its wake, it had forged me into something stronger, something more aware, something that understood the true cost of misplaced trust and the enduring power of listening, even in the deepest silence. The world, once muffled, now echoed with the clarity of my triumph. And as I looked out at the horizon, not of the coastal property they had coveted, but of my own future, I knew I was finally, truly awake. The legal wrangling that followed my family's attempted coup was, while exhausting, surprisingly cathartic. The estate lawyers, led by the impeccably precise Ms. Anya Sharma, proved to be formidable allies. Their initial surprise at my regained hearing quickly morphed into professional admiration as I presented my meticulously gathered evidence. The digital footprint I'd created, The voicemails I'd subtly recorded through my discreet earbud, the carefully worded emails sent via my burner laptop. It all painted a damning picture of my family's avarice. Robert, initially blustering and indignant, found his defenses crumbling under Ms. Sharma's incisive cross-examination. His precarious business venture was exposed as a tangled web of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and outright fraud. The evidence I'd provided, showing his attempts to leverage my inheritance for his own illicit gains, was undeniable. He'd been so focused on the perceived helplessness of his victim that he'd overlooked the very real consequences of his actions in the digital age. His reputation, carefully cultivated over decades, shattered like brittle glass. The regulatory bodies, alerted by Miss Sharma, descended upon him with the swiftness of vultures. The whispers of his impending financial ruin were a stark contrast to his previous pronouncements of shrewd business acumen. Aunt Carol, true to her opportunistic nature, attempted to rebrand herself as a concerned aunt who had been kept in the dark. She presented herself to Miss Sharma with tearful pleas and stories of Robert's manipulative influence. Her act, however, was transparent. Missy B. Sharma, ever the pragmatist, politely but firmly reminded her of her complicity in the family meetings where the plans were discussed, her eager nods of approval, and her own hushed suggestions that bordered on coercion. Carol, sensing the tide turning against her, wisely retreated into a sulky silence, her dreams of a lavish lifestyle funded by my assets dissolving into nothingness. My father, George, was a different story entirely. The shame and remorse he exhibited were palpable. During a private meeting with Ms. Sharma and myself, he confessed the depth of his own moral failings. He spoke of Robert's persuasive arguments, how the lure of financial security for our family, a security he believed I, in my supposed incapacitated state, couldn't manage, had blinded him. He admitted to signing documents without fully understanding their implications, lulled into a false sense of righteousness by Robert's smooth pronouncements. "I was a fool, Arthur," he'd said, his voice choked with emotion. "A weak, pathetic fool. Robert preyed on my fears, on my desire to provide for you and your mother. I let him convince me that this was the only way, and the guilt, it's been a constant weight." I listened, truly listened, to his confession. The anger that had simmered within me began to subside, replaced by a quiet understanding. He was a man easily swayed, a man who perhaps lacked the inner fortitude to resist the siren call of easy wealth, but he was also a man who genuinely loved his family. His remorse felt authentic. "You made a mistake, Father," I said, my voice soft. "A grave mistake. But you're trying to make amends. That's what matters now." We began the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding our relationship. It was a journey paved with honest conversations, shared vulnerabilities, and a conscious effort from both sides to earn back trust. He started attending family therapy sessions with my mother and me, where we worked through the complex dynamics of our fractured family. He learned to listen, truly listen, and I learned to express my needs and concerns without fear of judgment or exploitation. My mother, Eleanor, remained my steadfast anchor. The ordeal had taken a toll on her, but it had also illuminated her inner strength. She had always been the moral compass of our family, her kindness, a silent force that even Robert's machinations couldn't entirely extinguish. Her relief at my recovery and the subsequent dismantling of her family's greed was immense. She embraced the opportunity to foster a more honest and open environment within our home. The legal proceedings were concluded with a settlement that left Robert financially crippled and his reputation in tatters. He was barred from any further involvement in my financial affairs, a judgment that served as a stark reminder of his failed ambitions. Aunt Carol, having wisely chosen silence over further entanglement, was left to her own devices, her opportunities for easy enrichment evaporating. With the immediate crisis averted, I turned my attention to the future. The coastal property, the very object of their avarice, remained mine. It was a beautiful, serene place, a sanctuary that had witnessed my grandparents' love and their dedication to the land. I decided to honor their memory by preserving it, not as a financial asset to be exploited, but as a place of solace and reflection. I envisioned it as a retreat, a place where artists and writers could find inspiration, a sanctuary from the relentless pace of modern life. I began the process of establishing a foundation in my grandparents' name, dedicated to fostering creativity and preserving natural beauty. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about transformation, about turning a symbol of greed into a beacon of hope. My own recovery continued. The physical toll of the illness had been significant, but the psychological impact of my family's betrayal ran deeper. I underwent extensive physiotherapy and speech therapy, regaining not just my physical faculties but also the confidence to engage with the world. The fear that had once gripped me, the pervasive sense of vulnerability, slowly receded. One crisp autumn afternoon, Miss Sharma and I met for a final review of the legal matters. The office, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, felt like a place of quiet triumph. "Arthur," she said, her voice carrying the weight of professionalism and a touch of warmth, "you handled this with remarkable composure. Your foresight and meticulousness were instrumental in achieving this outcome." I offered her a genuine smile. "I couldn't have done it without your expertise, Miss Sharma. You were a formidable force." She returned the smile. "The pleasure was mine. It's not often one encounters such a prepared client." We discussed the final arrangements for the foundation, the transfer of certain assets, and the ongoing legal protections for my interests. As I rose to leave, she handed me a small, discreetly packaged item. "A gesture," she explained, her eyes twinkling, "for a battle well fought." Inside was a beautifully crafted antique fountain pen. It was a reminder of a time before digital communication, a time when words were chosen with care and etched onto paper with deliberate intention. It was a fitting symbol of my own reemergence, a testament to the power of thoughtful communication and strategic planning. As I walked out of the law firm, the city bustled around me. The cacophony of traffic, the chatter of passers-by, the distant siren. It was a symphony of life, and for the first time in a long time I felt fully immersed in it. My deafness had been a performance, a calculated strategy, but my regained hearing was a profound gift, a rediscovery of the world's nuances. My family's attempt to exploit my vulnerability had, ironically, become the catalyst for my own awakening. They had sought to control me, to strip me of my agency, but in their hubris, they had unleashed a force they could never have anticipated. I had learned to listen in the silence, to observe the unspoken, and to act with a precision born of necessity. The fever that had brought me to the brink had, in a strange way, been a cleansing fire. It had burned away the complacency, the naivete, and the fear that had once defined me. It had forged a new Arthur, one who understood the true value of his inheritance, not just the monetary worth, but the legacy of love and wisdom that it represented. The coastal property was no longer just land and buildings. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to my grandparents' enduring spirit, and a promise for the future. The foundation I established would ensure their vision lived on, a positive force in the world, a direct counterpoint to the darkness that had threatened to consume my family. My father and I continued to navigate the complexities of our relationship. We had difficult conversations, shed tears, and slowly, painstakingly built a bridge of understanding. He found new purpose in helping manage the foundation, channeling his misguided desire to provide into something genuinely beneficial. My mother thrived in the newfound honesty, her quiet strength blossoming in the absence of deceit. Robert remained a cautionary tale, a ghost of greed haunting the fringes of our lives. He was a constant reminder of the choices we make and the consequences that follow. Aunt Carol, having learned her lesson, focused her energies on social climbing within her own circles, a solitary pursuit that offered little of the wealth she had once coveted. The world, which had once felt muffled and distant, now sang with a vibrant clarity. I could hear the rustling of leaves, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore at the coastal property, the laughter of children in the park. These sounds, once taken for granted, now held a profound beauty, a testament to the preciousness of life and the power of connection. My victory wasn't a roar of triumph, but a quiet, unwavering certainty. I had faced the darkness within my own family and emerged not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. The silence they had imposed had become my greatest weapon, allowing me to cultivate the intelligence, the foresight, and the resolve needed to protect myself and my legacy. The fever had broken, but the fire it had ignited within me continued to burn, not with destructive fury, but with the steady, enduring glow of self-awareness and purpose. I was no longer the victim. I was the survivor, the strategist, the inheritor of a legacy that was now mine to shape. And as I embraced the future, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was finally, truly awake. The world was no longer a quiet place to be endured, but a vibrant symphony to be fully experienced, its every note a testament to my resilience and the enduring power of listening. The antique fountain pen felt substantial in my hand, a tactile anchor in the swirling currents of aftermath. Ms. Sharma's gesture was more than just a gift. It was a quiet acknowledgement of a battle fought and won, not with brute force, but with meticulous planning and unwavering resolve. The city outside continued its relentless hum, a testament to a world that moved on, heedless of the seismic shifts that had occurred within my family's inner circle. But for me, the world had irrevocably changed. My supposed deafness, a strategic shroud woven from necessity and fueled by a simmering anger, had not only allowed me to gather the evidence needed to dismantle my family's coup, but it had also fundamentally altered my perception of reality. The physical toll of the illness that had necessitated my feigned incapacitation was a fading shadow. The elaborate physiotherapy and speech therapy sessions, initially daunting, had become a strangely grounding ritual. They were not just about regaining lost faculties, but about rebuilding a sense of self, brick by painstaking brick. The fear that had once been a constant companion, a cold whisper in the back of my mind, was slowly being replaced by a quiet, resolute confidence. I had stared into the abyss of my family's greed and emerged, not unscathed, but profoundly transformed. The coastal property, the glittering prize that had ignited their avarice, was now truly mine. It stood not as a monument to their failed ambitions, but as a sanctuary, a place steeped in the quiet devotion of my grandparents. Their love for the land, their dedication to its preservation, resonated within me, urging me to honor their legacy. It was a legacy that transcended mere monetary value, a rich tapestry woven from years of love, wisdom, and a deep connection to the natural world. The idea of establishing a foundation, a place where creativity could flourish and natural beauty could be safeguarded, solidified into a concrete plan. This wasn't about retribution. It was about redemption, about transforming a symbol of avarice into a beacon of hope and inspiration. The foundation, in my grandparents' name, would be my enduring testament, a living embodiment of their values, a stark contrast to the darkness that had threatened to engulf my family. My father, George, had embraced this new purpose with a surprising fervor. The shame and remorse that had initially consumed him had slowly given way to a desire for genuine amends. His participation in the foundation's management was more than just a way to channel his misguided protective instincts. It was a sincere effort to contribute to something meaningful, something that honored the very principles Robert had sought to corrupt. Our relationship, once strained by a chasm of deceit and manipulation, began to heal through honest conversations, shared vulnerabilities, and a conscious effort to rebuild trust. The family therapy sessions, initially awkward and fraught with unspoken tension, became spaces for genuine connection. My father learned to truly listen, to set aside his ingrained tendency to be swayed by persuasive arguments, and I, in turn, learned to express my needs and fears without the paralyzing dread of judgment or exploitation. My mother, Eleanor, remained my unwavering anchor. The ordeal had undoubtedly taken its toll, etching lines of worry and stress onto her usually serene face, but it had also revealed an extraordinary inner strength. Her unwavering kindness, her quiet moral compass, had been a silent force throughout the turmoil, a testament to her inherent goodness. The relief that washed over her as the legal proceedings concluded and her family's greed was dismantled was palpable. She embraced the opportunity to foster a more open and honest environment within our home, her innate warmth radiating through the newly cleared atmosphere. Robert's fate was a stark and unyielding consequence of his actions. The legal settlement left him financially crippled, his carefully constructed reputation shattered. The absolute bar from any involvement in my financial affairs served as a constant, humiliating reminder of his failed ambitions, his ill-conceived coup. Aunt Carol, wisely choosing silence over further entanglement, retreated into her own world, her dreams of effortless enrichment dissolving into the ether. She was left to her own devices, her opportunistic nature finding little purchase in the new landscape. My own recovery continued, a slow but steady ascent. The physical challenges were formidable, but the psychological wounds, the deep-seated sense of betrayal, ran even deeper. The physiotherapy sessions were a grueling but essential part of reclaiming my body, while the speech therapy was an intricate process of relearning not just how to speak, but how to communicate with intention and clarity. The fear that had once clung to me like a second skin began to recede, replaced by a burgeoning sense of self-possession. The Foundation's establishment was a complex undertaking, involving the meticulous transfer of assets and the implementation of robust legal protections for my interests. Miss Sharma, ever the consummate professional, guided me through each step with her characteristic precision. Our final meeting in her sun-drenched office felt like the closing of a significant chapter, a quiet triumph after a long and arduous battle. "Arthur," she began, her voice a blend of professional respect and a subtle warmth, "you navigated this with remarkable composure. Your foresight and meticulousness were instrumental in achieving this outcome." I met her gaze, offering a genuine smile. "I couldn't have done it without your expertise, Miss Sharma. You were a formidable force." She returned the smile, a flicker of genuine pleasure in her eyes. The pleasure was mine. It's not often one encounters such a prepared client. As we finalized the arrangements, she handed me the small, discreetly packaged item. "A gesture," she explained, her eyes twinkling, "for a battle well fought." The antique fountain pen, when I unwrapped it, was a revelation. Beautifully crafted, it evoked a bygone era, a time when communication was deliberate, when words were chosen with care and etched onto paper with intention. It was a fitting symbol of my own reemergence, a tangible reminder of the power of thoughtful communication and strategic planning. It was a stark contrast to the ephemeral nature of digital footprints and whispered threats. Stepping out of the law firm, I was met by the familiar symphony of the city. The cacophony of traffic, the murmur of passers-by, the distant wail of a siren. It was the soundtrack of life, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt fully immersed in it. My deafness had been a performance, a calculated strategy, a necessary shield. But my regained hearing, my re-immersion into the world of sound, was a profound gift, a rediscovery of the subtle nuances that had once been lost to me. The fever that had brought me to the brink of oblivion had, in a strange and paradoxical way, been a cleansing fire. It had burned away the complacency, the naivete, and the paralyzing fear that had once defined me. It had forged a new Arthur, a man who understood the true value of his inheritance, not merely its monetary worth, but the profound legacy of love and wisdom that it represented. The coastal property was no longer just land and buildings. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to my grandparents, enduring spirit, and a promise for a brighter future. My father and I continued to navigate the complexities of our relationship. The difficult conversations, the shed tears, the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding a bridge of understanding, these were the building blocks of our renewed connection. He found a new sense of purpose in helping manage the foundation, channeling his misguided desire to provide into something genuinely beneficial. My mother thrived in the newfound honesty, her quiet strength blossoming in the absence of deceit. Robert remained a cautionary tale, a ghost of greed lurking on the fringes of our lives. He was a constant, unwelcome reminder of the choices we make and the inevitable consequences that follow. Aunt Carol, having learned her lesson about the futility of effortless enrichment, focused her energies on social climbing within her own circles, a solitary pursuit that offered little of the wealth she had once so fervently coveted. The world, which had once felt muffled and distant, now sang with a vibrant clarity. I could hear the rustling of leaves in the wind, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore at the coastal property, the uninhibited laughter of children in the park. These sounds, once taken for granted, now held a profound, almost spiritual beauty, a testament to the preciousness of life and the enduring power of human connection. My victory was not a triumphant roar, but a quiet, unwavering certainty. I had faced the darkness within my own family, the insidious tendrils of greed and betrayal, and emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. The silence they had imposed, the very weapon they had intended to wield against me, had become my greatest asset. It had allowed me to cultivate the intelligence, the foresight, and the resolve necessary to protect myself and my legacy. The fever had broken, but the fire it had ignited within me continued to burn, not with destructive fury, but with the steady, enduring glow of self-awareness and purpose. I was no longer the victim, the pawn in their elaborate scheme. I was the survivor, the strategist, the inheritor of a legacy that was now irrevocably mine to shape. And as I embraced the future, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was finally, truly awake. The world was no longer a quiet place to be endured, but a vibrant symphony to be fully experienced, its every note a testament to my resilience and the enduring power of listening. The establishment of the foundation became a consuming, yet deeply fulfilling endeavor. The initial stages were fraught with the bureaucratic complexities inherent in such an undertaking, but I was no longer overwhelmed. Each challenge was met with the same strategic thinking that had guided me through the legal battle. Miss Sharma's firm continued to provide invaluable legal counsel, ensuring that every aspect of the foundation's structure was sound and aligned with my grandparents' vision. I immersed myself in the details, from crafting the mission statement to selecting the initial board members, all of whom shared a genuine passion for the arts and a deep respect for the natural world. One of the first major initiatives I spearheaded was the acquisition of a small, secluded plot of land adjacent to the coastal property. This land, previously undeveloped and overlooked, was a pristine example of the coastal ecosystem my grandparents had so cherished. It would become the site of an artist residency program, offering a sanctuary for painters, sculptors, and writers to immerse themselves in the tranquility of the surroundings and draw inspiration from its natural beauty. The idea was to foster a creative community, a place where artistic expression could flourish, unhindered by the pressures of commercialism or the demands of the outside world. The process of selecting the first cohort of residents was both exhilarating and daunting. I pored over countless applications, each a testament to the individual struggles and triumphs of artists striving to make their mark. I sought out those whose work resonated with the spirit of my grandparents, those who demonstrated not only technical skill, but also a deep connection to nature and a commitment to authentic expression. The anticipation of their arrival, the knowledge that this place would soon echo with their creativity, filled me with a profound sense of purpose. My father, George, found immense satisfaction in overseeing the logistical aspects of the foundation. He managed the property maintenance, ensuring that the coastal estate and the newly acquired land were preserved in pristine condition. His meticulous nature, once misdirected towards the illicit acquisition of wealth, now found an outlet in ensuring the smooth operation of the foundation's infrastructure. He took pride in overseeing the gardens, in ensuring that the grounds were a reflection of the natural beauty my grandparents had so lovingly cultivated. He often spoke of how the work gave him a sense of connection to them, a way to honor their memory through tangible action. My mother, Eleanor, became the heart of the foundation, fostering a sense of community and warmth among the staff and residents. Her innate ability to connect with people, her genuine empathy, created an atmosphere of welcome and belonging. She organized informal gatherings, shared meals, and facilitated conversations that often bridged generational and artistic divides. Her presence ensured that the foundation was not just an institution, but a nurturing environment where creativity and connection could truly thrive. As the artist residency program began to take shape, the coastal property itself underwent a subtle transformation. It was no longer just a family estate. It was a hub of creative energy, a place where new ideas were born and nurtured. The sound of easels being set up, the murmur of conversations in different languages, the scent of oil paints and turpentine drifting through the air. These were the new melodies that filled the once silent halls. One evening, as I stood on the veranda, overlooking the moonlit ocean, I received a call from Miss Sharma. Her voice, as always, was crisp and professional, but there was a distinct note of excitement. "Arthur," she began, "I have some rather significant news regarding Robert." My heart gave a slight lurch, a residual tremor from the years of conflict. "What is it, Miss Sharma?" "It appears," she continued, her tone measured, "that the regulatory bodies, having thoroughly investigated the extent of his past fraudulent activities, have now moved to seize a significant portion of his remaining assets. It seems his attempts to circumvent the initial judgment have only exacerbated his situation. He is, to put it mildly, facing a rather dire financial future." While a part of me felt a grim satisfaction, a sense of justice finally being served, the overwhelming emotion was one of weariness. The legal battles, the emotional turmoil, had taken their toll. I had no desire for retribution, only for peace and the preservation of my family's legacy. "Thank you for letting me know, Miss Sharma," I said, my voice calm. "I suppose some lessons are learned only through severe consequence." "Indeed," she replied, "though I suspect, in Robert's case, the lesson will be a long and arduous one. He has, it seems, a remarkable talent for self-destruction." The news of Robert's downfall, while predictable, served as a somber reminder of the path not taken. It reinforced the importance of the work I was doing, the creation of something positive and enduring from the ashes of family discord. The foundation's reputation began to grow. Word of the inspiring residency program, the dedication to preserving natural beauty, and the commitment to fostering artistic expression spread through cultural circles. I found myself being invited to speak at conferences, to participate in panel discussions about philanthropy and the arts. It was a far cry from the isolated existence I had once endured, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of purpose. The physical and psychological recovery continued to be a journey, not a destination. There were days when the echoes of past trauma would surface, brief flashes of fear or resentment. But these moments were becoming fewer and farther between, overshadowed by the growing sense of peace and fulfillment. I learned to acknowledge these feelings without letting them consume me, to recognize them as remnants of a past I had successfully navigated. The antique fountain pen, now a constant companion, sat on my desk at the coastal property. I used it frequently, signing documents, writing letters, its smooth, deliberate stroke, a tangible reminder of the power of intention. It was a symbol of a chosen path, a deliberate act of creation rather than a reactive response to manipulation. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves began to turn fiery hues, I found myself reflecting on the transformative nature of my experience. The fever, the feigned deafness, the legal battles, they had all been catalysts. They had stripped away the layers of complacency and fear, revealing a core of strength and resilience I never knew I possessed. I had learned to listen in the silence, to observe the unspoken cues, and to act with a precision born of necessity. My grandparents' legacy was no longer just a memory. It was a living, breathing entity, nurtured and expanded through the foundation. The coastal property, once the object of my family's avarice, had become a sanctuary for creativity, a testament to enduring love, and a promise for the future. My father's remorse had transformed into constructive action, my mother's quiet strength had become a guiding light, and my own perceived vulnerability had been transmuted into unwavering resolve. As I looked out at the vast expanse of the ocean, the rhythmic crashing of the waves a soothing balm, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges that had forged me, for the people who had supported me, and for the opportunity to build something beautiful and meaningful from the ruins of my family's attempt to control me. The world, once a place of muffled sounds and hidden threats, now sang with a vibrant clarity, its every note a testament to my resilience and the enduring power of truly listening. I was no longer defined by the silence they had imposed, but by the resonant voice I had discovered within myself. The journey had been arduous, but the destination, a life lived with purpose, authenticity, and unwavering self-possession, was more than I could have ever imagined. I had faced the darkness within my own family and emerged, not merely surviving, but thriving, a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and the profound wisdom found in truly listening. The symphony of life played on, and I was finally, truly, a part of its exquisite melody.
Subscribe for the full story.